All right, everyone. A few days ago, of course, before the dust-up between Jack Dorsey and Alex Jones, or before that, Marco Rubio and Alex Jones, it was very, very funny because there was no rebuttal allowed by content creators or by the actual victimized and abused with regards to Senate hearings regarding censorship, with regards to shadow bans and algorithmic manipulation and, depersoning individuals and groups across the entire internet for having views that would have been considered totally normal as little as 2 or 3 years ago. This has been happening for the last few years, which is exactly what I said would happen. I never expected that it would get national news, though. I expected it would slowly march along kind of in secret. Nobody would even really care. It actually gives me some degree of optimism that we're having a national conversation. Now, we shouldn't have to. We shouldn't have to have a national conversation about internet censorship. It's not necessary. Free speech applies. It's the modern public square. These groups partner with government. They should be considered constrained by the First Amendment. They're platforms. They're not publishers. They don't need to be responsible for the sort of material that takes place on their platforms. It's not necessary. Look, they're built by their users. YouTube's nothing more than a bunch of videos made by individuals. YouTube itself doesn't really make anything. Yeah, I mean, it does put out videos, tweets and stuff, but, it pales in comparison. It's like, what? 1/1,000,000% of site traffic comes from YouTube itself. What about Facebook? Facebook, all the pages, all the groups, all of the individuals, that's what makes up Facebook. Twitter, what's Twitter but a bunch of people with Twitter handles tweeting out? That's all it is. There is no other purpose to these groups. They are platforms. Amazon is basically a platform for e-commerce and for publishing. They're public platforms. It's the public square. This is where the press operates. This is where free speech takes place now. In the interpersonal sense, if you're a real social butterfly, and you go walk through the city and you're greeting everyone, you're talking to less people than I can talk to on a single YouTube video that takes me 2 or 3 minutes to make. That's the power of internet communication, and it must be safeguarded. Here's the thing. Here's what I think we need to do as content creators. We need to get a movement going to try to get any randomly selected 2 or 3 coherent content creators up in front of the Senate to talk about their experiences with censorship. We are the constituents of this body, of the U.S. Senate. I think Leahy is on the Intel Committee, oddly enough. He's from Vermont. I think he is. Last I checked, I think Leahy was. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. We're their constituents. We're taxpayers. I pay a great deal of taxes. I assume that many other content creators do. We should have a voice. Right now, we are being largely ignored. The problem is that when you're trying to point out to the government or whatever, hey, Silicon Valley's abusing us, you're usually using Silicon Valley resources to do so. That's the big problem, so they can just shadow ban you, prevent it from reaching the right party. And because they are so opaque in how their algorithms operate, nobody's even really going to know. Took a while for them to design a way to find out if the QFD shadow ban was in effect, and apparently a lot of those shadow bans were removed a couple days before the hearings. One day after, Alex Jones gets depersoned on both Apple and Twitter, effectively shutting a single man and his company out of the internet at large. For most intents and purposes, Infowars no longer exists. Now, it still gets more popular because it has a website and alt tech exists. But they're under fire too. Look, Gab just had its app rejected from the Google Play Store, or whatever it was, despite the fact that they had released a version that explicitly censors what Google would consider hateful content. Like, they made it a very mainstream style. They had 2 versions of the app. One is what Gab wants, which is it's free speech. Not going to censor people just because they said something that's offensive. It has to be criminal, or it has to be preventing somebody else from undergoing freedom of speech. You can ignore and block people if you have a problem with it. Fucking deal with it. They had another version that's like toned down Y7 version, which blocks all those yucky words out. It blocks you from saying poo-poo and pee-pee and all these other things that Silicon Valley thinks is beyond your mental age limit. Still got shot down. Therein lies the problem when they say, well, it's a free market, build your own website. Okay, good luck having an app for your website. Good luck getting a payment processor. Good luck getting a domain registrar to even host your site. Good luck not getting algorithmically manipulated by the handful of big search engines people use. Good luck having Discuss operate on your platform. You will have a skeleton of a site. You're going to be hooking it up through Tor, and 10 people will use it. That's fundamentally what will happen. Other than a handful of very edgy materials and sites, nothing's going to be able to survive because two groups, Apple and Google, control all app movement for the most part. There's Microsoft. It's like, what, got 2% of the market share. And Microsoft is a multi-billion-dollar entity. Just think of that. Even Microsoft can't really crack into the smartphone department. It's two companies. That's what we call a monopoly. It's a monopolistic situation. What we need to do is get a hashtag going. YouTubers Speak has been suggested. We need to talk about this. Larger creators, yes, I would encourage, you should make a video like this too. Get your fans involved. Take to Twitter, take to all of these sites. Let's talk to your constituents. They're all on Twitter, which means it's a public platform. You know, if a judge can rule that you can't be blocked by Donald Trump, why then can Jack Dorsey block you from talking to Donald Trump on the same platform? They've already laid the groundwork. They've already laid a legal groundwork for the claims that we can make that these sites are platforms. They are in the new public square. They are explicitly constrained by the First Amendment, specifically because the government uses taxpayer money to administer services on these sites. Government bureaus have Twitter handles. The USGS is on Twitter. The FBI is on Twitter. Your local police station is probably on Twitter. You, as an American citizen, have an intrinsic right to access those services because you have, under the Constitution, equal protection under the law and the right to express yourself. You have the right to address your grievances and protest things. You can talk to those governing members, the political bodies of which you are constituents, on Twitter. The same is true of YouTube. Every candidate has a YouTube page. Every politician once elected has a YouTube page. All of these services have YouTube pages. They all have pages on all of these major sites. They have Facebook pages, Facebook groups. You can consult them. They give you information. The tsunami is coming. There'll be a Facebook post, a Twitter post, a YouTube video, and a bunch of other stuff within 10 minutes. You, as an American citizen, have a constitutional right to engage in the use of those services. If you are not able to directly interact with them, you're having your constitutional rights violated. I'd go up before the Senate if I was one of the people there. And I'd say, hey, I've seen all sorts of people lose accounts. People that did absolutely nothing wrong. They broke no law in any of these cases under U.S. law. They broke no law. They were not hampering others from undergoing their free speech, free expression. They were not harassing. They weren't stalking anybody. Sargon gets kicked off Twitter. Why? Because he sent porn to a bunch of Nazis. That's why he got kicked off Twitter. They complained, he gets kicked off. People have been kicked off YouTube for even less than that. Sometimes it's a bot that did it. It's not it's not a legit claim. They get restored, but it didn't take 2-3 weeks. Look at what happened to Bering or Mr. Dapperton. How long did it take in there? I think with Bering it took like 3 weeks for him to get back on. With Dapperton, I think, wasn't it like 3 or 4 days to get those strikes removed? Some people, they still have strikes on there. You know, if you're a live streaming YouTuber, it can really hurt you if you go 2 weeks without being able to stream. Whoops, yeah, sorry, the next 14 episodes are canceled because a bot decided that I was inappropriate. Yeah, and it might take a month to get things restored to the proper working order. And then there's the economic side. You've got to understand, the Senate must understand, of all groups, the U.S. Senate should be able to comprehend the fiscal side of it. A great deal of money is made and taxes paid, because of activity that happens online. E-commerce, the innovation in technology that requires people to teleconference and talk to each other. They don't want to appear in person. You got some mad genius that locks himself in his basement and he's building a death ray, but he's not willing to talk to his investors directly, only through Skype or something. But then he gets banned off Skype because he said the wrong thing, and all of a sudden the US is behind in the death ray race. Now the Chinese have it. You could imagine a situation in which some crazy shit like that actually happens. By the way, if I went before the Senate, I would actually have to put on a suit. And I would actually have to constrain myself from swearing excessively. Might be difficult. Of course, some of those people, Obama said jackass and Trump says shit and stuff. So, I don't know. I guess the threshold for that's a little bit lower now. But yeah, we need to get something going. We need to defend ourselves. We need to be more proactive. Not just sit here and condemn it when someone's banned. Let's take the fight to them. And go up before the U.S. government and say, hey, some of you get it. You've spoken openly about that fact. We've got at least 3 U.S. representatives that were shadow banned on Twitter. Trump has, a rogue employee at Twitter managed to delete Trump's account for like 5 minutes. We've had people within politics that have had their accounts struck down on YouTube, that have had pages removed, that have been, severed by their domain registrars. It's happening even to people who are in mainstream politics. I would think they would be able to understand. Where's Rand, by the way? Rand needs to get involved in this fight. Be a really popular fight among his youth voters. We need to get Rand Paul and Justin Amash involved because they're workhorses. They can actually get something done, but we can't rely on the U.S. government, or any government really, to do anything unless we take proactive steps to actually make sure that they all understand there is a problem. Because if Rubio wasn't lying, which I think he was, he actually had no idea who Alex Jones was, despite the fact that he was the central figure pertinent to the meeting he had just taken place in. The meeting that had just taken place was about shadow banning and algorithmic manipulation and people getting deplatformed on the internet. Alex Jones is the central figure of the entire debate, and yet Rubio didn't even know who he was. This shows that the U.S. Senate obviously needs a refresher course. They need a bunch of YouTubers to speak to them because we actually know what we're talking about, because this is sort of what we live on a day-to-day basis. They don't. They have a different sort of forte. There's still a lot of them are from the cable generation. Ultimately, a lot of those people are in their 60s and 70s, and they're not millennials, they're not even Gen Xers. They're not from the tech generation, so I don't really blame them. Rubio doesn't have an excuse, though. He's like, what is he, like 42 or something? He's a young dude. He's not that much older. He's only like a decade and a half older than me. He's got no excuse. He uses Twitter. He knows how to upload a YouTube video. Doesn't know who Alex Jones is. Yeah, somebody needs to tell these people what's going on because the Constitution is being violated. They're specifically tasked with preventing that from happening. That's about all. Peace out.